Thank you all for coming out on this holiday weekend. We're very grateful that you took time from your Saturday afternoons, and we're grateful for the rain, which made it less rewarding to be outside. I'm so happy to announce today's lecture by our special guest, Ayomi Yoshida. An internationally known artist herself, Ayomi very graciously agreed to my request that she speak about her mother, Chizuko, and her mother's generation. This generation is the focus of our current exhibition in the Graphic Arts Gallery, Breaking Barriers, Japanese Women Artists, 1950 to 2000, drawn from both museum holdings and private collections. The exhibition looks at 5 women who were pioneers in the field of printmaking in the decades immediately following World War II. Each of the artists has a very distinct style and very distinct personalities, as you'll see in the exhibition. But I think that in many ways, Chizuko is perhaps the most fascinating because her fertile imagination led her to explore ever-new subjects and techniques. But I'll come back to that and Ayomi in a moment. First, I would like to welcome to the stage the Consul General for Japan in Portland, Mr. Hiroshi Furusawa, who will say a few words of greeting. Mr. Furusawa.
皆さん、こんにちは。Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here this afternoon and for inviting me to join you. It is my privilege and pleasure to have the opportunity to introduce today's lecturer, internationally renowned artist and designer Ayomi Yoshida. Ms. Yoshida will be talking about her mother, Chizuko Yoshida. So please allow me to just a moment to talk about Ayomi-san herself. Ms. Yoshida comes from a long line of artists. Her grandfather, Hiroshi Yoshida, her uncle, Toshi, and her father, Hodaka, were all celebrated artists of the Shin Hanga, or new wood block print movement in the early to mid-20th century. But as the Breaking Barriers exhibitions highlight so well, what is perhaps even more groundbreaking about the Yoshidas is that Ayomi-san represents the 3rd generation of female artists in her family. Both her mother, Chizuko, on whom she will speak, and her grandmother, Fujio, were also accomplished painters and printmakers who had significant exhibitions of their own. Now it is Ayomi-san who is carrying on the legacy of not only her father and grandfather, but her mother and grandmother as well. This is unfortunately a very rare situation in Japan. But as a family before her, Ms. Yoshida is an innovator. She studied her art in universities in Japan, the States, and Spain. She has taught and lectured at institutions around the world, from Tokyo to Minneapolis to Romania. She has had no fewer than a dozen major solo exhibitions and has been commissioned by the Target Corporation for her own line of art plus design products, as well as a large-scale permanent installment at their Minneapolis headquarters. We are very lucky to have her here today to speak on her families and her mother's artistic legacy. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Ayomi Yoshida to Portland. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Good afternoon. Several months ago, Mary Beth asked me to prepare a talk about my mother, Chizuko Yoshida. As I knew very little about my mother as an artist, I had to do research from scratch. I'm very happy to be here today to share my findings with you. I first looked on the internet, where to my surprise, I could find no information about her exhibitions. Indeed, almost no information at all. Churchill said that history is written by the victors. The lack of information about Chizuko's work in the public record shows that in art history, women have often been the losers. In any period, in any country, the minority who wish to be heard must break down the walls of authority. As a female artist working in the 1950s and 1960s, Chizuko broke down one barrier after another. Her accomplishments and their significance for the history of modern Japanese art deserve to be better known. Three years ago, when Merbeth visited Chizuko's studio in Tokyo, my brother and I happened to discover a new and precious source of information about our mother's early career, tucked away inside a box that hadn't seen opened for some 50 years. We found her diaries from the years 1948 through 1952, when she was between 24 and 28 years old. Her thoughts and struggles with art, her emotions as she fell in love and fell out of love, and her self-admonition to keep focused on art, are recorded in great detail. My talk today will focus on the facts discovered in those diaries. Chizuko was born in 1924 as the eldest daughter among 5 children of Inoue Kamajiro, who worked for the trading company, and his wife, Sawa. From a young age, Chizuko loved singing and dancing. In junior high, she passed the test for the famous Nichigeki dance team. After 6 months of training, she debuted on stage. However, dancing was not so easy. She wrote, "Line dancing was not my forte." And I always had trouble with the timing of lifting my leg or getting it to exactly the same height as the dancers beside me. After 1 full year, she realized the limits of her own talent and withdrew from the troupe. She was 16 at the time. It was at this moment when her mother, Sawa, offered advice. It's important for women to have an occupation. Being an artist is a wonderful profession. Why not take up painting as your career? And with that, Chizuko entered a special high school for arts. In 1941, the year that Chizuko graduated from high school, World War II began. She spent part of the next 4 years in Aomori, her mother's hometown, safe from the danger of war. On her return to Tokyo, she plunged into daily life with new energy. By day, she worked as a secretary, and her evenings and weekends were spent at the movies or theaters. Just before the war started, Chizuko's mother, Sawa, found a painting teacher for her daughter, Kitaoka Fumio. Kitaoka was 23 at the time, and Chizuko 17. Although the two met in 1941, it's likely that Chizuko did not become Kitaoka's pupil until the late 1940s. Kitaoka taught Chizuko the basics of oil painting. The two often went to movies and concerts together. Chizuko also loved to go to dance parties where writers and artists gathered. Chizuko and Kitaoka would remain close friends until Kitaoka's death 60 years later. In 1948, at age 24, Chizuko found a second mentor when she joined the circle of Okamoto Taro. Okamoto had lived in France for 10 years before the war, where he had been involved in the abstractionist and surrealist movements. Back in Japan, he worked hard to spread these new avant-garde trends among his countrymen. He created the Night Society as an informal group of artists who shared his ideals. Chizuko wrote, "Hearing Okamoto's passionate talk made my spine tingle. I knew I wanted to do abstract art." In her diary entry from May 21, 1949, Chizuko wrote, "Okamoto came to see my work. Some wet pigment stuck to his hand. He shouted, 'This is abstractionism. This is truly abstractionism.' Not long afterwards, Chizuko submitted my world, this is my world, to the Pacific Painting Society exhibition. The group focused almost entirely on representational art. It was the first time an abstract work appeared at this distinguished exhibition. The fact that it was painted by a young woman caused quite a commotion. A young artist admired this work at the exhibition and sought out Chizuko to speak to her. It was Yoshida Hodaka, who would later become her husband. In the next year, Chizuko won a prize for Thor, an abstract painting she submitted to an exhibition. Newspapers and magazines picked up the story, but there were some negative reviews. In Chizuko's diary, we read, "I was hurt by the cruel words of trusted friends and completely lost confidence in my work. But Hodaka and friends at work wrote her letters praising the painting, and she was energized again." Despite these setbacks, one important result from Chizuko's diary, early careers as a painter, was her progress toward expressing music in painting, as seen here in Serenade, a work dating to 1942. 1942, sorry. One day in 1951, a postcard came from Kitaoka, Chizuko's painting teacher. It was an invitation to attend a lecture by a critic who had recently returned from France. Chizuko's record of this special evening fills 4 pages in her diary. After the lecture, Chizuko had dinner with the critic and 6 printmakers. The artists, who were older than Chizuko by 10 to 20 years, were most famous printmakers in Japan at the time. This dinner was an important occasion in raising Chizuko's interest in printmaking as an art form. In 1953, 4 years after their first meeting, the 29-year-old Chizuko married Yoshida Hodaka. Hodaka had consistently been one of Chizuko's most ardent fans, praising her use of color and her artistic talent. The marriage brought Chizuko into an internationally renowned family of artists. Hodaka's grandfather, father, mother, and elder brother were all painters or printmakers, and the whole family traveled abroad frequently. Hodaka's proposal to Chizuko was, "Won't you travel the world with me?" Here, we see Chizuko at work in the family studio It's fascinating to see that she was always on top of the latest fashions. She loved cardigans, which were popular in Japan during the 1950s. And like many women of the time, she took up smoking. Let's look more closely at one of the prints she was working on in 1956, titled Mambo. We've already seen Chizuko's interest in translating music into visual form in 1956. The Cuban band leader, Perez Prado, known as the King of the Mambo, came to Japan. And soon, Mambo was all the rage. Do you know the The print is a monotype, a special technique for creating one-of-a-kind works. Chizuko probably learned this technique from Onchi Koshiro, the influential leader of the creative print movement. The vibrant colors were also unique to Chizuko, thanks to a product newly available from the Nikka Pigment Company. At a time when other printmakers used traditional pigments, Chizuko's print stood out for their colorful palettes. In 1954, Chizuko was invited to join the prestigious Japan Print Society. In a group of 62 members, she was one of only 5 women. 2 years later, in 1956, Chizuko and 8 other women printmakers got together to form the Women Print Society. It was the first organization to bring women print artists together for mutual support. With the establishment of the Women Print Society, active correspondence grew up among its members. They exchanged news of all facets of their lives and urged one another to make and exhibit prints. Although it was sometimes difficult to find a gallery to display their prints, somehow they managed to present annual shows from 1956 onward. Their 10th anniversary exhibition was held in New York at the Pratt Graphic Arts Center, a great triumph. The group exhibitions were a time of celebration. We can imagine the artists enjoying a few hours of relaxation, exchanging views about their work, and discussing plans for the next year. In 1957, 4 years after their marriage, Hodaka took Chizuko on the long-promised honeymoon trip. In my research for this lecture, I was able for the first time to determine their complete itinerary. Together with Hodaka's mother, Fujio, the trio spent 1 year going around the world. And everywhere she went, Chizuko carried a notepad and a sketchpad. Her careful effort to record her impressions of her journey became an important resource for her prints in years to come. The Yoshida trio held exhibitions at various spots along the way. When in Portland, Chizuko, who had a license to teach ikebana, taught a flower arranging class. I discovered that my parents and grandmother spent 1 full month in Eugene, Oregon in 1957. Chizuko created 3 prints then, one of which is in the current exhibition. To this day, my mother has fond memories of Portland and Eugene. Chizuko became pregnant on that tour. Judging from her letters, she was torn on whether to return to Japan or give birth in America. In the end, she continued her travels for several more months. Returning to Japan in January 1958, her first child, me, was born on February 1st. An exhibition for the Women Print Society was scheduled for not long after her return. So Chizuko got back to work right after I was born. Chizuko was most excited about the desert scenery she had seen in Arizona. While she worked in the studio, her mother-in-law, Fujio, looked after me. Over the next 4 years, through 1962, Chizuko continued to work at the fast pace, all while raising 2 children. Without fail, she exhibited each year in the Women Print Society exhibitions. She wanted to be a model for other women print artists, demonstrating that it was possible to be both an artist and a mother. Although Chizuko was constantly experimenting with various techniques and subjects. There are certain themes that appear in her work time and time again across 50 years of creativity. Among these are ice and seashore, butterflies, and music. She said, I really am truly satisfied with my work. One of the reasons I return to certain themes is to work on them over and over until I get it right. In 1948, at age 24, Chizuko had written in her diary, I was stunned by the beauty of the ocean and the lines of waves washing ashore. I collected baskets of interesting shells to bring home. Much later in 1995, when she was 71 years old, Chizuko traveled to see the ice floes offshore at Utoro in Hokkaido. She said, I wanted to create a work that would reflect the sight of drifting ice and the sound of the floes crashing together. Chizuko is perhaps best known for her prints of butterflies. I will never forget my experiment when, on one of our travels, a beautiful butterfly flew close to me. That print that seemed to depict many butterflies really portrayed a single butterfly dancing. Chizuko's diary records that music was often her motivation for creating a print design. Tango tunes, melodies from Carmen, Schumann's Traumerei, mambo, and jazz were all sources of inspiration. I can remember her singing opera arias while working in the studio or cooking dinner. And Rondo, see here at the lower right, is a work done in 2005 when Chizuko was 81. She says that she saw cherry blossoms swaying in the wind, and they seemed to be dancing the rondo. And this year, Chizuko turned 92. She suffers from rheumatism that cripples her hands and feet and can no longer create her beloved prints. And she says, my head is full of ideas. I can't wait to get back to work. She says, as she does her rehab exercise. I too look forward to the day when she can again indulge in her passion to create art. Thank you for kind attention. Thank you very much.
We have plenty of time for questions. Could we have the lights come up just a little bit?
Yes.
I'm wondering, I teach Ikebana, and I was wondering if you know what school of Ikebana your mother taught when she was here.
生け花スコー、なんだっけ、草月、草月スコー。I can't remember her professional name for Ikebana, but 草月。Yes.
That last photo, her at 95 in 2005, that one right there, is that one of her paintings?
Yes.
She's still active as a painter.
Yes. 今は no, she is not doing paintings.
But that is one of her.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. It's been wonderful to hear about your mom, and having also done some research on her, I know how little existed, and it's just wonderful to hear the story fleshed out. Thank you. I'm wondering if you discovered whether she had any personal relationship with Gordon Gilkey, who was curator of prints at the Portland Art Museum for so many years.
ゴールデン行基どうだろう。It could be. どうしようか。詳しくは分からないけど、多分また日記をとかその時にもらったサイン帳を見ればもしかしたらあるかもしれない。
The diaries only go to 48, so they don't cover the period when she was here. She doesn't know for sure, but if she goes back and looks at documents from the year of travel, she may find something. But I think that if I could extrapolate a bit, I think one of the really surprising discoveries was when they spent a year traveling the world to spend a month in Eugene. And we were worried about the length of the talk, so something that we cut out was Ayomi speculates that her mother they must have made a connection and clearly had access to a studio. And we don't know if it was U of O or a private, printer's studio in Eugene. But I think Mr. Gilkey was at Corvallis at the time, and I don't know enough about, how relations went amongst the universities at that time. So it's an interesting topic for future study.
Study, okay. And who else? ないかな? Okay.
Last chance.
Did you have an easel in her studio so that you work side by side with her?
何? Easel?
スタジオにいて、イーゼルを持ってお母さんと隣で仕事してあったんですか？
私がですか？私はね、時間帯を変えて、私は夜仕事をして、両親は昼間仕事してました。
If I understand the question right, you're asking if she worked beside her mother, and she said, our life schedules were different. I worked at night, my parents worked in the daytime. But maybe we can ask, did your mother do her work on an easel, or in the photographs we see her on the floor? Could you talk about that?
Easel は Yeah, I think she when she painted the oil paintings, she used easel, but usually she works on the table when she making prints. That makes sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Your lecture was fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
He was such an inspiring figure. Do you know, were there other women in his Yoramukai?
Ah, yes, I know very few women.
Let's repeat the question. The question, Lin Katsumoto, who's also a scholar of prints, asked, calls out the importance of Okamoto Taro, the surrealist, and asked if there were other women in the Night Society.
Women、私が聞いたことある名前は一人二人ぐらいですね。I have heard.
Ayomi says she's heard the names of another one or two that may have been in the group. But I want to emphasize, she brought out, Ayomi did a lot of research. I mean, this, she said to me, scholars are really strange people. You find all these little pieces of information and then it starts to come together. So one was, she spent time looking at the numbers year by year of the members of these print associations. And the Nihon Hangakai, the Japan Print Association, again, we cut out some of this, but to be a true member, you had to be nominated and accepted and so forth. And Chizuko was one of only 5 out of 62 members in 1954. And then, so it was partially because women were not getting into that group that she and the others got together to form the Women's Print Association. And this is an unusual phenomenon for us because I don't think we think of, artist associations, but in Japan, being a member of an association is really crucial, not just for mutual support, but for getting a venue to be shown. And both Ayomi and I should say we're lucky to have her husband, Bido Yamaguchi, ちょっと立ってごらん here today. Bido is a carver of no masks and now new series of masks, enjoying a series of exhibitions in the United States. But both of them have told me that because they don't have regular teaching positions in a university, they guest teach, and also don't belong to associations, they have to be very savvy about finding places to display their work. So for Chizuko to create a society, and then for 10 years to fight to find a place to have their work shown, was one of her really great contributions to the field. Any other questions?
一番後ろの
You mentioned Chizuko's work in ikebana flower arrangements, and I'm curious if ikebana or flowers in general, or plant life in general, was one of the streams of inspiration affecting her work as a printmaker.
なんでしょう。生け花やったことがどういうふうに。
生け花をやったということを伺いました。それで生け花もしくはお花とかプランツがインスピレーションになったでしょうか。ふみやさんと違うんですよ。
どうでしょうね。でも多分直接はインスピレーションになってるわけじゃないけれども、やっぱり生け花っていうのはどこに何を置くかっていうのがとても大事なので、直接は生け花がインスピレーションの元になってるわけじゃないと思うんですけれども、やっぱり生け花と似てるようにどの色をどこに置くか、どの形をどこに置くかっていうことはとても生け花と通じてることだと思います。
So Ayomi's answer is, you can't see the direct connection in the sense of flowers or plants being an inspiration. Chizuko's early works are very abstract and you can't recognize the motifs. But she said what her work has in common with ikebana is that ikebana teaches you to think very carefully about what you put where, about composition and color. And she sees that as very much in common with her work as an artist. Any more? One more.
How has your mother's work influenced your own?
私にどういう影響があったか。Good question. And difficult. 難しい。私に自分では自分のことがよくわからないですけれども、 やっぱり小さい時からその両親が仕事しているものをずっと近くで見てきたので、例えば色の使い方だったり、その仕事に取り組む姿勢だったり、そういうことは習ったわけではないけれども、自然に私の体の中に入っていると思います。
She says it's very difficult to speak about my own work. And I didn't consciously sort of study from them. But growing up, of course, I saw my parents working. I saw how they handled materials, how they used colors, and very much their attitude towards work, the way they gave their lives over to being creative artists. And that sort of seeped into my pores.
Okay?
Well, thank you all for coming, and I want to remind you again that the exhibition, Breaking Barriers, which is if you go out and up the stairs and zigzag back, is only open one more week until April 12th. So I hope you have time to look at the works carefully. And thanks again for coming today, and thanks again to Ayomi.
Thank you very much.